Hello, and welcome to another radical episode of Furries in the Media, the series that reviews video clips based on how the furry fandom is represented. I'm your host, Abergwine, and for today's episode, let's take a look at Dorkly's video called Otaku Trucker Furry Road. Heads up, there's going to be a lot of nerdy jargon in this episode, so just bear with me.
You're a long way from Tokyo, stranger. And frankly, I don't like the look of your muzzle, you weeaboo.
Friend, there's a vast valley between a lowly weeaboo and a noble otaku such as myself. But I wouldn't expect you to know, you damn yiffers.
Whoa, dial it back! There's no reason for that sort of ugly talk, from either of you. Why are these guys being so hostile to each other anyways? Furries and anime fans have never really had a reason to be rivals, right? Well, fandom rivalries seem to start because of frictions between similar fandoms, but I don't really think furry and anime are that similar that they would clash like that. It seems more like they're portraying the aversions that some people would have for the other fandom. For example, some furries just don't like seeing the anime art style everywhere, and some anime fans don't like furries because of the stigma surrounding the furry community. I don't think this video's portrayal is reflective of any actual rivalry between anime fans and furries, but I think they used it as a way to show the flaws of both fan bases, and maybe to show that fandom rivalry is just dumb, no matter how you cut it.
Society's shunned us for years. Really, what's so funny about grown men in fursuits? Sure, maybe it's a little bit goofy, but deep down, don't we all want to be happy? What's wrong with something that brings someone else joy?
I'm not sure if any furries were involved in the creation of this video, but I can definitely appreciate that Dorkly gave the furries a decent amount of validity to their argument. And there's really no denying it. Furry is definitely weird by pretty much every standard, but if it makes people happy and stays within the realm of legal activity, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But Abergwine, the front of his bike says "Yiffer die." Doesn't that make him a Yiffer? It does, in the same way that seeing this monstrosity on the road totally confirms that the driver is shacking up with all the ladies because of the silhouettes on the mud flaps. So you think it doesn't make him a Yiffer? I don't think he couldn't be a Yiffer, but I don't think the writing on the front of the bike alone is enough to confirm that he is one. Even with the rest of the context in the video, we don't actually see him do or say anything that confirms it one way or another. Would there be anything wrong with it if he was a Yiffer? I really don't think it should matter, so long as what he does is legal and preferably kept behind closed doors. Why do you think they included Yiffer die on the front of his bike anyway? I guess Dorkly included it as a furry version of the saying ride or die.
This ends now. I'm gonna make you sorrier than Hayao Miyazaki walking through Akihabara.
You poser. I bet you're just a fan of My Neighbor Totoro, when in reality...
The best Ghibli film is the underappreciated classic... Porco Rosso!
Furry is a pretty diverse interest that often includes many different media formats, from comics and video games to, well, even Miyazaki films. While I'm on the topic, Culturally F did a video discussing anthropomorphic characters in anime. The link to that video is in the description, and you should totally go check it out after this video if you haven't seen it already.
I'd like to apologize about the yiff thing. I guess I was wrong about furries. They're not all gross perverts obsessed with sex.
Oh no, I get it, but honestly, nobody here's into that stuff. I mean, except for Horus, and Artemis, oh, and Pupper, Mumpy, Raven, Foxy, Humper, Thumper, Sex Beaver, and Steve.
Hey. Given how the lead furry biker doesn't want to be called a Yiffer, even though his actions and affiliations seem to strongly indicate otherwise, he comes across as a walking contradiction of himself. But what if we instead interpret his character as a representation of the entire furry fandom? Sort of like, if Monday was a person, it would be Dolores Umbridge. If the furry fandom was a person, they might act like this. Looking at the furry community from a broad perspective, it's hard to miss the adult content, yet many furries would rather not be associated with that. Coming from an outside perspective, this seems hypocritical, but we have to remember that the sheer volume of adult content in the fandom does not directly correspond to the number of furries that partake in the adult content, let alone would want to be associated with it. This aspect isn't really contradictory when it's applied to a group, but if you applied this aspect to a single character, it comes across as very hypocritical. I like to think that we can also interpret Otaku Trucker's character similarly. He acts like a weeaboo because the weeaboo stuff is often the most noticeable thing about the anime fandom, but he doesn't like being called a weeaboo because most anime fans aren't weeaboos, nor do they want to be written off as one. Now it's time to look at the review stats. Information accuracy is 100%, and the spirit of the clip is 75%, giving us a total score of 88%. And now it's time for my thoughts. I realize that there was a lot of nerdy jargon in this episode, so I'm going to take a moment here to define some of the terms that were used in this video. Furry. A person who is a fan of anthropomorphic animals. Anthropomorphic animals are animals with human characteristics, like Tom and Jerry or the characters from Zootopia. Yiffer. Derivative of the word yif, which is a furry-created word referring to sex and sexual-themed content. A yiffer is one who yifs. The term is often used as an insult against furries, insinuating kinky or abnormal sexual acts or themes. Otaku. In Western culture, otaku generally refers to someone with an extreme interest in anime or other Japanese media like manga and video games. There is a lot of context and history to the original Japanese word, but for the sake of this review, we only need the Western definition of the term. Weeaboo, commonly used as an insult for a person who is obsessed with everything Japanese. It is most often characterized by a presumptuous ignorance about Japanese culture. For example, a weeaboo may think that they would assimilate seamlessly into Japanese culture just because they've watched the first season of Cowboy Bebop. Would you say this video is a fair and accurate representation of the furry community? You know, Sam, I think it is. There is a lot of adult content that seems to get an unfair amount of attention, but a good portion of furries don't take part in it, and most furries would rather not be immediately associated with it anytime the fandom is in the public view. In that sense, I think the furry leader character is a good representation of the furry community as a whole. Regardless of my interpretation, I can see how the furry characters could potentially mislead people into thinking that individual furries are all walking contradictions, or are otherwise in denial about the adult content that exists in the furry fandom. With that being said, these are some of the most interesting characters that I've gotten to dissect in my review series. If they're meant to represent the fandoms as a whole, then it makes sense that, despite the implications, the furry bikers don't like being written off as yiffers, and Otaku Trucker doesn't like being written off as a weeaboo. Do you think there's a lesson to be learned from all this? Every fandom has something bad about it, but nobody likes to be reminded of those faults anytime they talk about the thing that makes them happy. The video makes it pretty clear that the characters just want to be recognized for what they like. I guess the lesson to be learned here is just treat everyone with the same respect you want to be treated with. I don't know about you, but I want to watch Mad Max Fury Road again. Heck yeah, I need more of that flame-throwing guitar. Well, that's it for today's episode of Furries in the Media. Have fun, stay awesome, bye-bye!